All right, okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the new week. Okay, so as usual, quick housekeeping and disclaimer first, to let everyone over here know that, of course, we are talking about the live markets. Okay, just want to make sure that you're aware that any information presented throughout this session, basically they are based solely for educational purposes and they may be trades that I'm taking. Okay, but it doesn't directly constitute to any form of financial investment or any kind of like direct trade signals, right? So you just need to be aware. Trading and investing involve risks, okay, and make sure you are well aware of how to manage your risks before taking any trades that perhaps would give you some insights, right, and ideas that we're sharing in today's session. Okay, so what we're gonna do, typically over here is we're gonna walk through the markets, look at the overview of the week, highlight some of the opportunities that I think is worth noting. What I'll be doing, I think, hopefully, starting this year here, in some of our communities, we have started to share a little bit more into the trade review. Okay, in terms of some of the trades that we take, profitables, break evens, or even losing trades. We kind of share the review inside. I'll probably take one or two trades out and share with you guys in today's session as well to give you a glimpse into how you can do your journaling, how you can do your trade review, to help you improve, moving forward as well, right? What you need to extract, what are some information that you want to put in down into your journal to help you make a better trade decisions for future trades, right? That's, I think, something that we can add on in this session over here. Okay. So very quickly, let's take a look at the overall week. So last week was generally quiet. We do have two news coming in, right? Last week was the Australia CPI as well as the US CPI. It's still basically last week is still basically considered like fairly quiet because it's the start of the new year. Okay, so the first week, second week, not much of a volatility in terms of the FX market. We did see some nice movement in the crypto side of things, right? I mean, a couple of nice little trades actually came from commodities and crypto for me to kickstart the year. FX side of things is still very, very quiet up to today, okay? But I think moving forward after this week, going into next week as well, we'll probably see some volatility kick back in. Okay, and I strongly believe that the market will start to build, more movement as we progress throughout the year, okay? So this week, we do have a couple of important news, right? To start off, tomorrow we have the Canadian CPI. Okay, so CPI data is fairly still important at the moment. Okay, as we start to shift towards more, in terms of the economic performance of the individual countries, I would say. But for now, CPI is still fairly important, though it has dropped quite a bit. Okay, so that's on the Canadian side tomorrow. Wednesday we do have the pound side on CPI as well. The US retail sales. Okay, so we have a couple of important data coming in. Thursday morning we have the Australia labor market data. Okay, so that's going to be crucial as well. And then to end off on Friday, we have a little bit on retail sales from the UK as well as the US consumer sentiment, which I don't think is going to be like super important, right? So we do have a couple of things. To I would say most of it is gonna happen early part of the week. Okay, where we have the CPI data coming in, right? So again, why is it important to take note of the data? Is simply because it's sometimes, if you're trading related currencies, it will give you that volatility or potential catalyst that can move the market. Okay, so you just want to be aware. If you're trading any related stuff, you know, you can either capitalize on it or at least help you to understand the risk involved. Okay. So with that said, let's jump into the charts over here. Okay. Now the FX market, especially on some of the major pairs, has been in a consolidative phase since I would say the beginning of the year, right? So we are 2 weeks in, okay, and the market has been essentially consolidating throughout the entire 2 weeks. It may be a little bit frustrating for some of you guys, right? Might be thinking, how come there's not much of things, and then the common mistakes when the market is in a consolidating phase is that traders get too bored, they don't have any trades and then they just force something in, right? So you just want to be very aware not to fall into that mistake. Okay, when there's nothing clear, it's always good to just stay out of it. And of course, if you're looking beyond the currency market, then you might find opportunities outside the FX market as well. Okay, so very quickly, let's jump into the dollar index. Okay, so for me, the dollar index is building up into a very clear structure at the moment. Right, end of last year, we did see the market put in a low around 100.60 and made a very impulsive bounce up. Okay, and since then, as I mentioned at the start of the year, the market has been going sideways. Okay, which is great because it's developing into a pattern structure that we're all very familiar with, right? When we have an impulsive move to the upside, following that a corrective phase, that suggests there's a very high probability the market would likely continue to push higher. Okay, and from an Elliott Wave count perspective, we potentially would have wave 5 completed end of last year, and beginning of this year here, we kind of started the first little push up. If you can get again the corrective phase down, then we can minimally expect one more push to complete a 3-wave structure of a WXY with a target around 104.25, right, which is where the previous wave 4 is. Right, so going forward, I'm actually short-term bullish on the dollar. Okay, I think the structure is super clear. The directional bias is also very clear for me. The only thing that I'm basically interested to wait out for right now is to give me a setup to look for a buy. Okay, so with the dollar index giving us a pretty clear direction to focus, of course, some of the majors here will give us some clarity too, right? For example, the euro dollar, okay, is again kind of inverse to the dollar index. It's giving us a very nice little clear structure, right? We have that impulsive drop, since the late last year. And right now we're seeing a little bit of consolidation, right? So if you can get a pullback correctively towards like 1.1030, 1.1060 around that zone, that's the area to look for a sell, right? And then my target right now for the euro dollar potential sell trade will be all the way back down to 1.0725. Okay, so that's the outlook going forward, right? So be patient because this may take a little bit of a while for the market to get into a territory that we're interested to look for a sell. Okay, but essentially the pattern structure, the directional bias is super clear. Okay. Now for pound dollar, it's a little bit of a mix. So that's the reason why I'm on the neutral side of things, because we don't have a clear pattern structure, right? So this is definitely corrective in nature, no doubt about it. But the thing here is, are we gonna see more downside, or the market is just gonna probably give us a little bit of a pullback and then a continuation back up to kind of complete the bigger move here? Right now, we don't have that clarity. Okay, so sometimes certain pairs give us clearer structure, like the euro dollar. We definitely want to focus that a little bit more. And when a particular pair is not really give us some clear structure to tell us the directional bias, we may want to just put them aside, maybe come back in the future when things are a little bit clearer, right? So case in point is basically the pound dollar. I think it's not the clearest pattern structure as of now, and for that reason, I'll be putting this aside and not really give it too much attention moving forward for the week. Okay, then we have the Aussie. Okay, Aussie pattern structure is pretty similar to the euro. Okay, we are also expecting the downside over here, but of course, ideally, I want to see this to pull back a little bit more towards this area around 6750, 6780 to look for a sell, right? Now the direction is quite clear, especially when we have this huge pattern development. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we get an impulsive drop. So a corrective setup over here would definitely give us more downside, right? And right now my target is just back at the 50% retracement from the low to the high. Okay, that will put us around 6570. So this one and the euro dollar is pretty clear in the overall direction, right? So that naturally the euro dollar and the pound dollar, the euro dollar and the Aussie dollar would be the two trade opportunities to pay attention for the week. Okay. Now for dollar Canadian, we're still generally bullish. Of course, the idea here is, can we get a decent pullback to jump into the buy side of things, right? The direction is clear because what we have is the market has been, putting lows for quite a significant period of time, right? Since the start of November all the way towards the end of last year, basically close to 2 months, we have seen price coming down, okay? And late December is where we see it bounce up impulsively. And of course, if I zoom in a little bit, we are seeing a little bit of a crawlish pattern over here, right? So what I mean by crawlish is that the price continue to go up, but it seems to show some struggle. Okay, instead of very strong momentum, the market seems to be struggling a little bit. So oftentimes when we see that development, there's a good possibility in market need to pull back to reset before the next move, right? So the direction is clear, right? There's no reason to be selling the dollar Canadian at the moment. But if you are looking to buy it at this price point, it's definitely higher risk because your stop, if you're going to be very conservative, needs to go all the way below that low, right? So if you're going to buy here and you put a stop there and if you target here, at most you're going to get maybe 1:1 risk to reward ratio, which is not going to be very, very beneficial, right? So my personal take on this is we have clear direction, but we don't have a setup at the moment to capitalize on that yet. Okay, so what I want to see is for price to pull back towards an area where, if you're gonna look for entry there with a stop below and the target at the top, at least, okay, the risk reward ratio is gonna be more significant. Okay, so this may take time. Again, it's not something that I will be focusing too much for the week. Okay, but it's definitely something to look out for going forward. Okay, same thing here in the dollar yen. Overall, I'm bullish. Okay, but we're kind of expecting a little bit of a deeper pullback first before getting involved in any buy trade. Okay, so why am I bullish? Because we kind of have this pattern structure and the market basically broke up off the trend line impulsively, and we potentially start to see a little bit of a pullback here. Then that's a buy opportunity to the upside. So the dollar Canadian and the dollar yen, more or less quite similar. There's just that subtle difference in the structure and the pattern that's developing, but the direction and the bias going in is more or less the same, right? So that's the major pass. And then for gold here, okay, we are still neutral, but starting to look out for buy opportunity going forward. Okay, so my take on gold right now is from this low we kind of got an impulsive three-wave move. Okay, then the market actually end of the year, first 2 week of the new year, basically do a little bit of pullback, very corrective in nature. It tagged the area around 2013, gave us a little bit of a bounce. Okay, not a strong confirmative bounce yet, but still a pretty decent bounce, right? So the idea here is I'll give it maybe a day or two, maybe by Wednesday. Okay, if I can see a nice little corrective pattern here, that will give me more confidence that there's a likely possibility where price has put in a bottom around 2013, and we can likely see more upside with a target around 2130 or even more. Okay, so from a longer term, larger time frame macro perspective on gold, definitely I'm bullish on it. It's just more of the short term. Do we want to get involved in the buy? Where do we get in on the buy? Okay, so gold here is something that I'm paying attention this week, because if you can get a corrective pullback in the next 1 or 2 days, that would definitely give me a decent buy trade opportunity as long as price remains above this low. And of course, you can see the risk to reward ratio is definitely there, right? So gold is definitely one opportunity in my list. Okay, so you can kind of see the tags, one are the ones, right? Euro dollar, Aussie dollar, and gold. Okay, crude oil, we are overall still bullish. Crude oil was a nice little asset that gave us 2 very profitable trades just within this year itself. Okay, one of it we managed to take it somewhere there, okay, with this bounce, and then another one somewhere there again with this bounce, right? So I kind of hit our targets in the short term as well. Maybe later I'll show you the trade review so you can understand this a bit more as well. Okay, now overall, this is pulling back. Right now, not the best pattern structure. Okay, this may actually come back down before the pushback again. If kind of extend the channel a little bit. Okay, I'm not gonna be surprised if this actually come back down a little bit more, right? Because this is very corrective in nature, so this kind of gives us an impulse correction. Maybe one more drop, retest a little bit of bottom area, then push back up. So of course, prior to this entire development, our initial expectations is quite straightforward, right? We just want this to go impulse, pull back, and then we want this ideally to just kick off and make a move higher, right? But the market development kind of seems to suggest that, okay, the momentum to the upside seems to be struggling. Okay, so as this continues to develop, we definitely want to be cautious, right? So you can see over here, the entire development seems to be corrective, and the suggestion is just to be careful as well. Okay, so direction is still bullish on crude oil, but of course we may see a deeper pullback, and for me, I'm not too keen in buying up the crude oil at the moment, right? Simply because we have this pattern development that doesn't really give me high conviction at the moment. Okay, S&P very slow as well for the start of this year, but I think we're definitely gonna test that all-time high, right, which is around 4,820, right, 4,820. I think there's a very good possibility price would just tag it. Okay, but what you want to be very careful is after tagging it all-time high, there's a good chance the market will do a pullback first, right, or rather significant retracement. I'm very bullish on the equities market for the year of 2024, but if you're looking to trade it, you need to time it optimally as well, right? Because if you're gonna get in at a buy, you don't want to buy at the very, very top, right? You want to buy with a decent risk to reward ratio as well. So oftentimes you might want to wait for the pullback before you get involved in a buy trade. Okay, so S&P for me, right now I just want it to tag the all-time high, and I want to wait for it to pull back before I'm gonna be interested in buying it up. Okay. Some of the yen pairs over here in terms of like pound yen and the Aussie yen. They're generally not the clearest right now. But there's a good chance we may see a little bit more of a deeper pullback for the pound yen. Okay. But you also want to be careful, because if this is just going to turn into a corrective move, then this would likely continue higher, right? So we'll need to adapt our analysis as the market continues to evolve throughout the week. So for now, the expectation is, of course, completed this tree move. If you can get an impulsive drop followed by corrective, retracement, then of course we can expect a deeper pullback, and that can be a short-term sell opportunity. However, if the next couple of days the market essentially just struggle to move lower and form a corrective move like that, something like this here, then this would suggest more upside, right? And would naturally be more cautious, maybe shifting back towards neutral, give a little bit more time for the market to prove exactly what it wants to develop first. Okay. So same thing in the Aussie. I think Aussie is just basically in the consolidating phase, so we're just gonna keep it aside, right? We're not gonna be focusing too much on that. Okay. And then we have the pound odd, right? So pound odd over here carries a little bit similarity in terms of what we're seeing in the dollar Canadian, right? Kind of have a little bit of a crawlish pattern over here. So definitely the focus is on the downside, okay? But of course, you don't just want to sell it just because you see the pattern, right? You want to wait for a little bit of a confirmation, okay? And what will be a nice little confirmation is wait for price to come down impulsively plus a corrective pullback, right? That will give you that setup to look for sell. So you want to see price comes down impulsively, right? And then form a corrective move. That itself will give you the probability of more downside. Okay, so I'm basically focusing on that. If you can get that, then of course we'll be looking at the sell side for pound Aussie. Okay. At the moment, I'm not too keen in buying it, right? Again, for the pattern, is higher probability it's likely gonna pull back and reverse first. Okay. EuroCAD, my take is probably don't want to focus on it. Again, it's very, very corrective. Seems to be in a range bound environment. I'm gonna leave it until price break away from this consolidation and start to give me clarity. Okay, but for that, until then, I'm not likely gonna touch this. Okay. Crypto is where things are a little bit more interesting, right? Because we have the SEC giving the first approval of a ETF related and tracking to Bitcoin prices. But again, the normal thought process is, well, that's a positive thing and likely price will go, but not necessary, right? You can see after that approval, we have a positive short-term sentiment. But after that, Bitcoin price actually tanked quite a bit, right? But you'll be surprised, right? I actually didn't trade Bitcoin, right? In fact, some of those other cryptos that we're monitoring, actually rallied quite a bit, right? One of it is actually BNB, okay? Which we kind of managed to hit targets, earlier today as well, right? Very, very nice little push up. So I'll just very, very quickly share with you, some of the trades that I think I'll be monitoring for crypto. ETH, Ethereum, we're looking at short-term sell, right? So if you can get a little bit of a corrective pullback, we have this pattern here. I'm looking at a short-term move to the downside. Target right now is somewhere around 2336, but of course, the target, we need to update it along the way, right? But for now, that's the target. Okay, I'm also looking at Cardano, potentially a buy to the upside. I'm actually in this trade at the moment, right? Just to very, very quickly show you, this is the trade that's running at the moment. Okay, kind of tag the entry quite nicely. A little bit of a reaction from there, so ideally we want to see this just continue to go higher, right? So ADA is another one looking at outside, and the other one here I have in my watch list is TRX, right, which is Tron. So this one here is pretty similar to the Ethereum outlook, right? We're looking at a corrective move over here, so we can get an impulse correction, and we'll look for a short-term sell. Okay. So for me, these are some of the things I'm looking at the moment, right? So FX side of things a little bit quiet, a little bit slower at the moment. Okay. But there are still some decent ones that we can pay a little bit closer attention and see if things develop into a setup. That's where the opportunity will kick in. Okay. Great. I do see some questions coming in. Maybe very, very quickly, I'll bring you over, okay, to just very quickly show you one of the examples of our trade journaling. I think that's fairly important as well, right? So this is basically something that I started this year for community members, to kind of keep track, right? To also give some ideas and show you guys basically how to do it. Okay, hopefully it help you, right? So you can see from the start of the year, these are some of the trades that we've been sharing, and these are all close trade, right? That's why we have an outcome of it, right? So you can see commodities has been doing pretty well for us so far. Crypto as well. The only trade that I had on FX actually ended up with a stop, okay, on Aussie, and but nothing to complain about, right? Because overall, I think that's a pretty great start for the year. I'll very, very quickly walk you through the recent one, which is BNB, which we kind of had just today. Okay, I mean the trade just closed today. So take this as a potential reference and template for you to do your own journaling, which I think is very important, right? So what I usually like to do, or I would suggest you to include in your journal, is of course screenshots of your trades. I think that's very important. Okay, always have a before and after. Whether it's a winning, losing, or a break-even trade, always have a before and after, because that would give you a visual idea of like, okay, what did you see before the trade got triggered, right? And what's the market movement after the trade got triggered? So you can actually look back and kind of extract lessons and information into how you can improve on certain things, what worked well, so that you can duplicate and repeat it in your future trades. What are some of the mistakes and what are some of the things that you notice, so that you can avoid them in the future as well. Okay, so that's very important to take before and after. Okay, and then of course do a review, right? So some guiding questions just for your reference, is like, what are some of the factors that I believe contributed to winning, right? And of course, if it's a losing trade, you also want to go through the lessons. But I think for losing trades, more importantly, is to review: did you follow your plan? Did you have the discipline to go through the checklist of your plan. Did you make any mistakes in terms of like emotional decision? I think that's more important. Okay. Try not to over scrutinize your plan, right? Because some traders would want to perfect their plan to avoid every losing trade. It's not possible. Okay, so don't fall into that trap, right? When you have a losing trade, I think more importantly is to review, did you follow your plan, right? As long as you follow a plan overall, if your plan has an edge, you would still have losing trade, but that's fine, right? So some of the things to note as well, right? What are things that you can avoid or duplicate in the future? Okay. Now we do always have a plan as well, right? So this is a completed trade plan. Basically means that the trade is done, it's complete. We have an outcome, we have a result. Okay. But before you take a trade, you need to have a plan. After you take a trade, you have a review, you have a journal, right? So this again to very quickly show you, some of the things we go through in our plan. Okay, of course we do have like higher time frame analysis, lower time frame setups as well that we talk about, things like that. Okay, so I just want to very quickly show you this. Maybe very quickly jump into a losing trade review. So the odd yen, things didn't work out. Okay, so the review over here, you can see before this was the trade setup, and then after it didn't really play out as what we want. And then of course the trade review you can see here, right? Okay, as I mentioned, the review here is overall there wasn't any mistakes. Okay, because we follow exactly the plan, we follow the entire process. It's just that this didn't play out as intended, right? So we just accept the fact that it's not going to be 100%. Okay, so what could have done, is that you can look into how the before and after, right? So we realized that once we enter the chart, we kind of hover around a little bit in the entry, and then it didn't really go in our intended direction immediately, right? It kind of took a lot of time to hover around entry, so I kind of review on that as well. Okay, price didn't react and move towards the direction that I want. Perhaps I could have exited at break even or a small loss in the future, right? But of course, you don't want to just make a decision or change your entire plan just because of one trade. Okay, but it's always good to then again put all this down as you are reviewing, so that in the future, if I have like a couple of more losses here, I can look back and then I realize, oh, okay, they all have similar, instances, and therefore I would then be able to make that changes and update in my plan. Okay, so just want to very very quickly touch on this to really give you an idea. It's not just about entering or exiting a trade, right? There's like before you execute, there's the plan. After you take that trade, you need to manage it, and after managing it, there's a result. You want to do some journal to see how you can improve on things. Okay, so that's the entire process of it. Okay, hopefully kind of give you an idea on things. Okay, so good. Very quickly, let me cover some of the instruments that you guys have mentioned over here, right? So the first one here I see is from Dan, asking about the Kiwi franc and the Aussie franc. Okay, so very quickly, Aussie franc over here. Okay, let me clean up the chart a little bit. One thing that I would like to point out on this particular chart is, of course, this little low is still being respected. Okay, everything that has developed from this range to this range here, especially this entire move, is corrective in nature, right? Because this impulsive move still holds. Okay, and one thing to note, of course, is the market is basically, I would say, potentially, okay, can develop into a crawl here. So I would see the overall direction I would be more inclined to focus is definitely upside, right? So on the bigger scheme of things, I'll put this something like this, three-wave move, right? Of course, internally, okay, internally this can be a three-wave move here as well. Okay, and this here probably a five-wave inside it, right? So that becomes a, okay, maybe wave 4 somewhere there, and then wave 5. So maybe this is not so much of a WXY or an ABC, right? But again, the label to me is not that crucial. But the thing is, this can be an expanding flat development, right? So expanding internal is 335. Okay, so that can be a possibility. Overall, I think the direction to focus on this is likely still upside, right? So if I'm gonna look at this, I would want to have some confirmation, which means I want price to maybe break above this minor high impulsively. Okay, so if I can't draw it, probably I want to see something like that. Break out impulsively and then wait for a pullback for my entry to the upside, right? So there's no need to rush things through. Of course, if you're going down into a lower time frame, you can even look for smaller time frame entry model. Okay, but I think overall direction is upside. Okay, Kiwi franc more or less the same, right? I mean, overall you can see we are testing these areas. Okay, so as long as price is basically still respecting that area, I think you may want to look for upside, right? So again, what you can look out for is to wait for that impulsive break out of this level. Okay, if you can get that, then of course that would open up the upside possibility. You have a couple of key areas to look out for. Okay, but I think these two pairs, there's a higher probability for price to be going higher. Okay, and that's the direction you probably want to wait out for. Okay, Euro Yen. Euro Yen. Okay, I think we did this analysis sometime back. I think overall it still holds. Okay, I think nothing much has changed overall. We did see some reaction over here. Of course, you want to monitor, as I mentioned, quite similar to the pound. Okay, the pound yen. If this basically continue to come down corrective, you want to be very careful because this means more upside. Okay, but if let's say this is just gonna go up from here and then it struggles a little bit, and then after that you see a small little impulsive rejection, this can be a little bit of a double topish pattern, and then of course that can still continue lower, right? So I think overall nothing has changed. It's still likely bearish, okay, but you just want to keep track on the development of price going forward. Okay, it will give you a little bit more clue whether the probability is due to the downside or we're gonna see a little bit more upside after that. Okay, so yeah, that's on the euro yen side of things. Dollar CAD with channeling technique seems very far as it close to wave one crawl pattern for me. What's my take on that? Okay, for dollar CAD, right? 3-6. Okay. I think dollar CAD for me, I wouldn't put in a channeling technique yet. Okay. The thing about channeling technique is I won't use it for just one wave like that, because I'm looking at this as wave W, right? Channeling technique, I only will use it after I have minimum 2 waves, right? So W and X. So X needs to come back down to form X, and then this bounce off to know X low has been formed. Only then can we put in a channeling that looks something like that, right? So for me right now, I wouldn't utilize the channeling technique because we only have this first wave, right? So I think that's what I'm gonna do, right? That's how I look at it. Okay, so if you're gonna do a channeling technique from here, of course, it's gonna be very, very steep. Okay, which I would personally not do that. Okay, and then adding on to that, I'm seeing this as a corrective crawl. So there's a good odds this will probably come down a little bit first before the bounce, right? So kind of give us that reset, that retracement down. Okay. Euro odd and Kiwi dollar. Euro odd. Okay, we didn't get that pullback. Okay, Euro odd is still upside, I would say. Okay, but just be very, very careful with this, right? So kind of similar to the dollar CAD, right? You may want to wait for a pullback first. Okay, so initially we were expecting a pullback earlier, but we can't get a crawl. So overall structure, nothing has changed. Okay, we're essentially still looking for upside. It's just give it a little bit more time. Okay, you want to wait for that pullback, true wave, then you look for the buy, right? So direction is still pretty much the same, upside. Okay, Kiwi very much similar to Aussie. Okay, very much similar to Aussie, so we can't get this pattern here, right? Potentially maybe a flat or an expanding flat, right? So very, very similar. Okay, very similar. So downside, right? So we're looking at downside for Aussie and Kiwi, both downside. Okay, Ethereum. No, we're not looking to buy up Ethereum. I'm personally looking to sell the ETH side of things. Okay, in near term. Crude oil. I was seeing the patterns forming flat WXY with W completed and price currently at wave X to complete. Let me just very quickly take a look at that. 68.45. Okay. Maybe if I get you correct, you're expecting this to come down to form the expanding flat, right? My take is always I'm always gonna project the simplest pattern first, right? Because I like to keep things simple first, right? So my forecast on the pattern is always gonna be, can I see a simple three wave structure? If I can, I'll stick to that until proven otherwise. The thing about forecasting is you don't want to forecast a complex pattern right at the start because it's gonna confuse a lot of things, right? You have so many different patterns in the complex nature. You have an expanding flat, you have running flat, you have a triangle, you have double zigzag and things like that. So for me, we'll keep things simple. If I can see an obvious tree wave, we'll stick to that. If we can't, I'll move away from that particular asset and I'll look at something that I can identify as a simple pattern. Okay, and that's the reason why you realize on crude oil over here, with this current development, I'm really not paying too much attention on crude oil anymore because this is not a clear pattern that I want to be capitalizing on, right? When we were taking the trades, okay, it was somewhere there. Okay, maybe if I can't, just let me very quickly show you what we were looking at when we were taking that buy trade on crude oil. Okay, so you can understand what I meant by clarity, right? So the very first crude oil trade that we took for the year, okay, is basically here. Okay, let me just show you that trade plan, right? We're looking at it when the market was like that. Can you see how clear that pattern structure is, right? We're simply basically expecting 1, 2, 3, right? It's a WXY structure, okay? And of course, the setup that we're looking at with this, okay, it's a very clear order flow setup, right? We do not have an Elliott Wave setup back then, but the higher time frame structure pattern is very clear. Okay, so that's what kind of contributed to it, right? But you realize with time, price developed seems to be a little more complex, right? And that's the reason why right now I'm not really focusing on that. Okay. Dollar CAD channeling is for the bigger wave in yellow connecting wave 1 and 3. Okay, are you referring to this? Okay, I'm not probably not really clear as like exactly which one you're referring to. Yeah, but I wouldn't. This channel here wouldn't give much value in the context of where we are right now, right? Before this entire development, obviously you can use that technique to, target potential wave 5 is, right? Because that's usually how we can look at wave 5, using the channeling technique. But I think with all the development that price has done over here, probably not much value of that channel anymore, right? Okay, so that's my thing, right? Right now for dollar CAD, I wouldn't use any channel at the moment, right? I wouldn't use the channeling technique at the moment. I have short sell goal at 2057. For me, goal here, right? Just giving you some shorter time frame perspective. This is what I expect, right? Would it pull back? Nothing is certain, okay? But we are always expecting again a simple three-wave move, right? So that's what I'm expecting. Of course, you kind of got to sell around 2057, right? So I mean, if you want to remove your risk, you can always shift stops to break even. Um, yeah. Okay. I'm overall interested in the upside, but I'm expecting the pullback first, right? So it doesn't necessarily mean that price needs to go up immediately. Okay. But of course, can it go up immediately? Everything is possible in the market. Okay. So that's why you need to be very clear. What is the conditions? What are the setup? What do you need to see from a market before you execute a trade, right? And then once you execute a trade, what are some of the rules to guide you in managing that? I think that's also very important. Okay. Okay. Oh, okay. Oh, you mean the white? So there's the larger degree, right? So I think you're referring to this. Um. Yeah. Okay. To me, that is a there's a good possibility. I mean, this one has already broke out of it, right? So if I were to look at things, right, will I eventually still stick to this as wave three and then expect this to come back down? I think it's a little bit too far fetched, to kind of project so far into the future. What I would like to keep an eye on is if this is gonna develop in three wave, right? By the time the market reach somewhere around this zone, it will give us a little bit more clue as to are we gonna see a little bit more upside, or are we gonna see a continuation back down after looking at things like that. But that's not a concern today, right? Because the shorter term perspective here is we are interested in these movers. Okay, so after the market, as the market continues to develop, I always say this, right? As the market develops, it gives you a little bit more information. We always utilize that extra piece of information to then again forecast what's going to likely happen in the future, right? As the market continue to evolve, we take in new information and then we can process, all right, what's going to happen in the future. Okay. So I think right now, based on what I'm seeing in dollar CAD, right, I do have this count here. You can see in the larger degree, we're kind of expecting, after wave 4, we have like wave 5 at the bottom, right? So we're kind of looking at this like that. But again, can we easily evolve into another count? Yes, right? Can this be the end of it? Can this be wave 5? And then we start to see, upside on things possible. Okay? But I think it's irrelevant right now in the context of where we are at the moment. Okay, because whether is this gonna keep going higher or not, okay, we still need that piece to develop first, right? This correction needs to come. Then we'll look at this upside. Will this upside terminate and start to go back down, or will this upside continue? Then the next piece of information on how price is going to develop here will give us that clue. Okay, so yeah, hopefully that can make sense, right? Good. Yeah, so generally those are the things that I'm looking out for. Again, it's still fairly early into the year, so some things are still very slow. Just need to be a little bit patient on that. But of course, you want to always be prepared so that when momentum starts to pick up in the market, you are ready to always jump on it. Okay. Now, last thing here to very very quickly cover is so far this year, right? We're still having this everything trading live stream for free. Okay. I was told that moving forward, they haven't really decided yet when, but there will be a time where it's not likely going to be free for everyone. But right now, it's still free for everyone. Okay, so if you have yet to register for your account, right, or I would say it's the first time you hear about this, right? I would strongly encourage you to do register for account, right? So very very quickly, let me log out and show you how it looks like. Okay, you want to head over to everythingtrading.com. Okay, and of course, if you're new, you just click on the sign up button. It's free. And then you just follow the steps to sign up. And then once you sign up, you can then click on the login with your username and your password. Once you have logged in, okay, right now is where you can see all the live trading sessions conducted by various traders as well, not only myself. You can actually register and join in for free at the moment, and there's no limit, right? You can basically join in every session if you want to. Okay, for me, I run the session usually on Tuesday and Wednesday. So at the moment here, I'm running the London session. Okay, so on Tuesday is in Chinese and Wednesday is in English, right? So you can register on that, right? And then on the left hand side, you can see there are various features as well. Feel free to explore all of them. Again, it's free at the moment. Everything is free over here. Okay, so since it's still free, I will encourage everyone to go and explore, maximize it. Okay, kind of before they decide to not make it free. Okay, yeah. So just want to kind of bring this up, especially for those of you who are not aware. Some of you maybe are already aware of this. Just continue to join in for those sessions. Not only me, right, but again, you can join in Daniel's session as well. Okay, yeah, so that's all from me for today. Kind of hope that the session give you some ideas to work on for the week. Okay, all the best for the new trading week. Okay, and as usual, see you guys next week again on Monday. Okay, see you guys. Bye bye.